Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to the marketplace. Coming up, banking system still strong despite losses incurred as a result of the domestic debt exchange program. We hear from CEO of the Ghana Association of Banks, JoyNews.
There's strong liquidity in the environment, and that's a sense of heavy liquidity in the environment is what even led the central bank to begin winding back on the relief on liquidity.
Also coming up, we'll tell you how rural bank Ahanto is re-strategizing to reduce the negative impact of the domestic debt exchange program.
What we do basically is to offer financial services to people both in the urban and the rural areas, and businesses and individuals alike.
And we discuss the future of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement as disparities in economic conditions pose a challenge.
You have to get to that point where everybody, all countries in Africa, are on the same macroeconomic policy stance.
My name is Daryl Kwawu. Thanks for joining us. Details coming up. And thanks for staying with us. First up, the Ghana Association of Banks has said that banks in the country are in good standing with their financial position despite losses incurred by the lenders following the domestic debt exchange program. A recent assessment of financial statements of banks showed that banks made losses of about 6 billion cedis due to the debt exchange program. But speaking on the Super Morning Show on Joy FM today, Chief Executive of the Ghana Association of Banks, JoyNews, said the capital position of banks is strong whilst there is enough liquidity in the banking system.
I'm not sure there's been any record of any person who has gone to a bank or any of our outlets and has not been able to transact freely. So, and that is expected to continue into the future. I personally do not have any fears at all. Of course, I wouldn't say that everything is rosy. You have seen the results for 2022, which is not a result that we are all kind of used to. And results have implications. But the central bank has also put in measures to help banks to weather the storm where there are difficulties. You know that for capital, we reduce the capital they almost remove the capital conservation buffer. There are several other measures that they have put in place. Even for regulatory capital build-up, we have been giving time to build up our capital. So all these are measures that the central bank has also put in place to enable banks to work through the difficult times, particularly, immediately following the exchange. But as we speak, there's strong liquidity in the environment, and that's a sense of heavy liquidity in the environment is what even led the central bank to begin winding back on the relief on liquidity, to stretch it a bit. So if there was liquidity stretch in the system, the central bank wouldn't have gone ahead to begin unwinding the relief on the liquidity or cash reserve requirement. So there is liquidity. You can walk to your bank, do your transaction, and you should do it just like you used to do in the past. Right. We do not have any cause to worry as we speak. We have the systems, the banks are operating, and they have all the plans in place, contingency plans. In the event of any eventuality, there are plans to arrest whatever potential impact will likely result. So I'm very positive about the future. We should look at if this exchange had not happened, where would this country have been? I think that question needs some answer. It is very difficult to answer that because we couldn't have sacrificed certainty for uncertainty. Not doing anything at all would have opened the entire financial system to whatever lied ahead, which we didn't know. And we took a very bold, difficult step to ensure financial stability by signing on to the exchange documents.
Well, let's get on to Zoom, speak with Chinibu Akodua-Boakye, who is the Executive Secretary of the Ghana Association of Savings and Loans Companies. Good afternoon to you. When we spoke during the exercise of the Domestic Debt Exchange Program, you indicated that at the time you did not envisage any direct impact. Now we are seeing banks reporting profit losses. We know savings and loans companies deal with the banks. Do you hold the view that your industry has enough buffers to insulate your members? Can you hear me, Mr. Chinibu Akodua?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you get my question? Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. So I was just making a point that at the time of the Domestic Debt Exchange Program, when we spoke, you said you did not envisage that the exercise would affect the savings and loans companies. Now that banks are reporting losses, I was just asking if you hold the view that your members have enough buffers in place, seeing that you deal with the banks.
Okay, thank you and good afternoon to your viewers. If you look at it, there's one thing that we need to always bear in mind, that there's a direct difference between profitability and liquidity. And so there is enough liquidity within the banking space, and even those of our institutions that were exposed in the domestic debt exchange program, you'll see that they continuously grant loans and they are serving their customers, those who want to withdraw or make any withdrawals on their accounts. And so from where we sit, we do not expect that those who were exposed in the DDEP will have any challenge, but they will continue to serve their customers.
So you don't think there will be a situation where it could affect the rate at which you access funds from commercial banks?
See, one thing that this has taught us is the fact that there's the need for financial institutions to diversify. There's the need for us to look at alternatives, and also the issue of granting of loans. We think that it's even going to enhance the
All right.
Considering the market, there is the need for all banking institutions to strengthen their risk management framework. And the central bank system that has been put in place is something that we will also continue to count on. You heard of the liquidity support framework from the central bank, and then the Financial Sector Stabilization Fund. So this is what we will continue to work with Bank of Ghana to ensure that any institution that will be in a position such that they will be impacted will have access to this fund to support their operation. So we believe that the framework put in place are things that if we continue to work with the central bank and the universal bank, the system will be more stronger.
So there wouldn't be the need to discuss with the regulator protective measures for savings and loans companies?
Oh, for protective measures, it's a continuous discussion. It's a continuous discussion. So the central bank, we continue to engage with them. The issue of reserves, the issue of capital adequacy requirements, the issue of credit risk and all those things, we continue to engage with the central bank. And we believe that with the right kind of conversation, the right response will be gotten. And what we also encourage the public, the customer, who is the king, is to continue to have that confidence in the banking sector. Because if you continue to do business with the financial system, then it will continue to be able to serve you better. And so that those who brought their monies, when we grant loans out of it, and people pay their loans, those who brought their monies will get their loans back. So the public also.
Okay, we're going to try and see if we can get Daryl Kwawu to continue with the conversation. Okay, I'm going to ask you the last question, then we wrap up on this. So going forward, what do you think? I mean, you mentioned that banks are still liquid. It's just the profitability that was affected. Do you envisage that this could affect a cost of borrowing, seeing that banks right now, even though we say the Ghana Association of Banks says they're in a strong position, could, I mean, scale back when it comes to lending to businesses?
Yeah, the issue is that the savings and loans, finance house, microfinance, we also depend on the public as well as the commercial banks. And once they are okay, they are in a position to serve us, we will also continue to serve our customers. And we will make sure that we also continue to play our role, the intermediary role, to make sure that the monies that we also receive from the customers, when they are in need of it, they also get it. And we want to encourage the public to continue to have this confidence because we don't have any other alternative to what we are going through.
Thank you so much. Daryl Kwawu is Executive Secretary of the Ghana Association of Savings and Loans Companies. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, we want to tell you about Ahanto Rural Bank, which has adopted stringent measures to reduce the negative impact of government's domestic debt exchange program on the bank's performance. The program, which is part of conditions for Ghana's bailout from the International Monetary Fund, is expected to reduce banks' earnings from investments in government instruments. Now, Board Chairman of Ahanto Rural Bank, Eric Danin, says the financial institution has re-strategized to keep the business afloat. Nanaya Ojima has more in the following report.
Recovery of the financial sector from the COVID-19 pandemic was met with the general economic downturn further affecting banks negatively. In 2022, the Ghana cedi depreciated by 54.2% against the 3.93% depreciation in 2021. Within the same period, inflation hit 54.1% from 12.7%. Nonetheless, the Ahanto Rural Bank made significant gains in operational figures, with deposits increasing by 24.3%. Total assets rose to 207 million from 166 million cedis. Board Chairman Eric Danin says despite the domestic debt exchange program, the bank is strategizing to stay profitable.
That's true. What we do basically is to offer financial services to people both in the urban and the rural areas, and businesses and individuals alike. We are calling on everybody, number one, to patronize the shares of Ahanto Rural Bank, to open accounts with the bank, to access our loans, which are very competitive in terms of interest rates, no hidden charges.
To expand its reach, the bank has opened a new branch at Kwesimintim in the Western Region. Chief Executive Officer Benjamin Afo Eshan says the move is to increase the client base.
Great privilege to be able to account to the shareholders of the bank and the community in which we operate. The results are good. In spite of all the challenges in the economy, Ahanto Rural Bank has been able to weather the storm. As part of this AGM, yesterday we commissioned our ultra-modern office for the Kwesimintim branch. It was such a delight to watch. So we are saying that we entreat all to do business with Ahanto, invest in Ahanto Rural Bank, and your shares will never go waste.
Nanaya Ojima for Joy Business.
Well, next, we want to take a look at the state of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. As you would know, Director General of the World Trade Organization, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, was in Ghana in the last couple of days, and one of her engagements was at the Institute of Economic Affairs, where she highlighted the need for African countries to work more on improving macroeconomic stability to support trading activities on the continent. According to her, it will take more years for the continent to have a strong currency to match up with the American greenback, and thus called for strong platforms to ease intra-trade activities. Take a listen.
It will take a long time because trading in a currency depends on confidence. And the dollar has by far and away, for many years, been the currency of use. People trust the stability in the US, the macroeconomic management there, the political management. So the dollar has generated so much confidence that it has become the currency of choice. In order to have another currency that matches it, you need that level of confidence. And that means you also need that level of stability in the economy of that country. So it will take a long time before we find currency. I'm not saying it won't work. I'm just saying it will take time to find another international currency that engenders that level of confidence. In the meantime, what we can develop and what the African Continental Free Trade Area is developing are platforms that enable us to trade in our own local currencies here. So I think that is what is happening, and that's a direction in which we can move. Of course, you know, the lady mentioned the volatility in the currencies, the depreciation, the difficulty. These are the teething problems you will see as more and more countries get onto that platform, which enables us to trade in our own currencies. And as countries manage their economies better, there are some things you have to do for yourself. So I can't bring stability. WTO cannot bring macroeconomic stability to a country and stop the currency from depreciating or the exchange rate. That management has to come from inside the country. And that is what the US manages to do to keep the dollar stable. So if once we get our macroeconomic management right in many of our countries, we bring more stability to all the currencies, then it will become easier to trade. So that's the only thing. So we just need to keep at it. Right now, things are not very stable, but you must remember that not all of it is the fault of those managing the economies internally. There were also some external shocks. Certainly the pandemic was a shock that nobody foresaw. The war in Ukraine was another shock. So there have been some external shocks, and we just need to navigate those.
Well, Secretary General of the African Continental Free Trade Area has been making the same point about disparities in economic conditions in many countries across the continent, posing a significant challenge to the vision of the AU to grow into a full economic union. In an interview with my colleague Blaise Sogan at a recent After Business Forum in South Africa, he also indicated it would take time for Africa as a continent to adopt a single currency regime.
Going as far back as the establishment of the Organization of African Unity, there's a very clear decision that Africa must have a common currency. However, getting there is difficult because you have to have macroeconomic convergence. We know from the experience of Europe, Greece, Portugal, when they were experiencing sovereign debt crisis, when they were not able to exercise monetary policy because it is centralized. So you have to get to that point where everybody, all countries in Africa, are on the same macroeconomic policy stance, convergence criteria on, for example, on GDP to debt ratio, on government deficit to GDP ratio. Those things have to be completely aligned. And if they are not, it's impossible to have a common currency. So that's the work that has to be done.
Executive Director of the Africa Center for International Trade and Development, Isaac Hubert Arthur, joins us on Zoom. He was in South Africa himself for the After Business Forum. Good afternoon to you. Great to see you. So what would you describe as the state of the Continental Free Trade Agreement right now?
Thank you very much, Daryl, and then also good afternoon to all your viewers and listeners. The AFCFTA, it's moving forward. I mean, with implementation, as you know, you are aware. You realize that the Guided Trade Initiative was launched somewhere last year, just to kickstart the commercially meaningful trading under the AFCFTA. and since then we have recorded some trade under the GTI initiative, and I think it's doing well. A lot of countries, the 8 piloted countries, have actually started trading. Ghana, has recorded some level of trade, with other member states, and it's doing well. I think it was good that it was piloted, so that we can have more experience and then also learn from some of the challenges that that will be encountered. And because of that, because of the success of the guided trade initiative, there's going to be an expansion of the GTI, where more countries, about 16 more countries are going to be added to the GTI, so that at least, by and large, we are gradually getting to a stage where, all the 54 countries that have signed, and then even the 47 countries that have ratified, will begin to actually commence commercially meaningful trade. Not so that it will not just be just by talk, but also by action. So
Okay.
I think so far, if you look at the nature of goods that are even traded under the GTI, that is also giving us hope. Where you see batteries, and certain African-made things that you would have easily sourced from Asia, are now being traded under the AFCFTA. That tells us that there's hope in the AFCFTA, and there's the need for member states to really begin to put their things together. It's all about the domestication.
Yeah. Listening to the WTO boss and the Secretary General of the AFTA, you get the sense they wish things would have moved on faster than where we are right now. What do you consider the biggest hurdle?
Yeah, obviously, I agree with some of the issues highlighted by the Secretary General. To have a whole continent like Africa, which is, and the AFCFTA is the biggest or is the largest free trade area, apart from the WTO, which really focuses on, of course, the global trade. The AFCFTA by membership is the largest. And if you look at the structure of our economies, it's not so easy to really kickstart and really move fast in terms of implementation of the free trade area, because there are issues with levels of development. There are monetary issues where different countries, different regions are spending different currencies and all of that. Customs harmonization that needs to take place. It's quite heavy. Okay, and if you look at how it's being planned, phase 1 is already done, phase 2 almost done, because now intellectual property, competition, policy, and then also investment protocols all have now been adopted and are undergoing through domestication, processes, so that they'll start to implement these protocols. That, if you look at it carefully, you realize that this is not something that it's very easy to implement bilateral trade of free trade. If let's say Ghana, UK, or the EPAS. But even the EPAS, look at the challenges we had. How much more a continental free trade area? And looking at our differences and the levels of development, it's something that it surely will take time. All of us expected from the beginning that, AFCFTA, once, the trading has kick-started, things are just going to move fast. But my brother, it is not like that.
So in the meantime, while we wait to figure out a common currency, what can be done to accelerate its implementation?
Yeah, so thankfully we have a President Bank that has, supported the AFCFTA by introducing the PAPS,
The PAPS.
you know, the Pan-African Payment, you know, settlement system, which I think it's a very good initiative. You know, if you go to the Comesa region, they've started, you know, implementing the PAPS where a lot of transactions are taking place. In ECOWAS too, there have been a number of countries and even banks. Ghana here, there have been banks that have rolled on to the PAPS system, you know, which is helping to ease the stress of always converting currencies into dollar before you can probably make payments, you know, across the border. So I think the PAPS is one good mechanism that is helping us be able to still at least have commercially meaningful trade under the AFCFTA.
Okay.
The same way we also have, you know, the adjustment facility that also was introduced, which is also supporting, you know, the states or the countries that are going to be affected by this AFCFTA to build their capacity and to help them to be able to successfully also trade under the AFCFTA.
Okay.
So there are a lot of capacity building initiatives ongoing, which are all supporting member states to be able to, first of all, negotiate and then also implement the AFCFTA.
I just have 30 seconds with you, and I just want your quick thoughts on the visit of the WTO boss, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, to Ghana, how significant it is, especially when the WTO is being criticized for its unfair treatment to developing countries, ignoring the needs of developing countries.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's a good step in the right direction. I mean, it's a good signal. You know, first of all, she's Nigerian. She's the first woman to sit on the WTO topmost chair. So for me, I think having her come to Ghana speaks a lot. Ghana is also hosting the AFCFTA. Ghana has become the center of attraction when it comes to trade in Africa. So there's a lot of concentration. So to have the WTO board.
All right, we've got to go, Hubert. Thank you so much for your time. We'll keep that conversation running. I'm sure we'll talk about it another time. And that's the Marketplace. Thanks for watching, everyone. More news on our website, myjoyonline.com/business. We will be back same time tomorrow. Do stay tuned.